Hello and welcome to That's Not Spit, It's Condensation. I'm Ryan Beach, and today I am joined by my good friend Kevin Paul. You may be familiar with Kevin from some of his online presence, but if you are not, Kevin is a member of the U.S. Army Band Pershing's Own, which is an incredible ensemble, and I've seen him do solos with this group and other types of great things, so it's definitely really great to see him there. If you don't already know about the project that he started with Ryan Brewer, another one of his bandmates, called Military Trumpet Jobs. It's a great resource that's aimed at trying to provide resources that will help you know more about the audition excerpts and things related to band excerpts, because there's a lot of stuff for orchestral excerpts, but not as much. But now there's like tons of stuff for band because of the work that both of you have done. So you can check that out. They have a website and an online presence. We'll cover that stuff at the very end, but that's what Kevin's about. I really appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about some audition preparation. Like I said, thank you so much for being here, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again. It was fun to collaborate with you over the past couple months.
Absolutely. So yeah, Kevin reached out to me and we got to talking about the audition preparation methods that I have developed, and he seemed interested in doing it. And so before we even talk about what those preparation methods were and what the effect of it was, I'd really like to hear from you why you reached out in the first place, because you already have a job, you have a great job, and I'm just curious, if you already have something that seemed to work for you, why would you reach out to try something different?
Well, we were collaborating. We've collaborated a few times, and I know you've talked about your gold method, and I've had other people that you've worked with talk about it, and I've seen some results. When we played together on the Mahler 2 with Richmond, we kind of got more into the weeds on that. And you explained your process, and it sounded like a way more organized version of what I had, or basically what I try to do in my own mind. The more, you get older and you have kids, you kind of get comfortable, what I call job chops. And, I felt like I needed to change something different. The beauty about being a musician is kind of always being able to get better and try new things. And yeah, I thought it'd be a fun collaboration to do with the Fisher Tolt project I was doing and this upcoming audition that I just had with Richmond Symphony.
Yeah, so the organizational part seemed to stand out to you the most. Is that correct? Or was there any other elements that you felt like was also sort of a selling point for you?
The organizational. You explained everything to me, and you kind of showed me a sample when you, me, and John Kaplan were talking about it, and I was like, this is just like all the work, all the organization, and I just real easy for me to just open up and just kind of follow it, and it's kind of in line with what I do really, and what I hear other people when I've gone to other people, what they do, just really methodical, organized, like metronomic practice, and kind of just like building up over time and really getting into the weeds of it, but not overdoing it. It's like I kind of beat my head into a wall every time I can get kind of frustrated when I work up something right now because I don't have enough time, or if I have to cram and I'm not as organized, and I'll just hit something over and over and over and over and over again. And it just kind of beats me down. But this was a much healthier, organized way of doing it.
Yeah, I've certainly experienced a similar thing, having a job and having, whatever repertoire to learn, but having goals separate from that. It's definitely helped me to manage being able to move towards those goals, but not at the exclusion of other things that I need to do, like my job or other things I may be interested in. So can you take us through the process as to the best as you remember it? I'm happy to fill in any gaps, but can you take us through the different phases and the different things that we focused on at any given time for this particular audition? And then we'll get into kind of what you felt the effect of those different phases were.
Well, it's good because we talked about it, and then things went bonkers at work and just in general. And it's just sort of like you texted me, and I was like, I really need to do this. Like I need to, and I was like, this is good. This is like accountability. Like I'm collaborating with you, and I need to do this, and I want to do this. So I finally I got, the Fisher Toll. Basically, that's the project I'm doing for people who don't know. Like the Fisher Toll profiles, I'm recording every single one of them as video on video, and I'm going to be posting them. Just sort of like a project I do every summer, something that kind of keeps me, keeps me fresh, keeps me on my toes. So I picked a Fisher Toll profile, which is an unaccompanied solo. If you haven't heard them, check them out. They're super fun, very awesome, sort of modern unaccompanied trumpet solos. And they've been on military band auditions before. That's how I first heard of them. So I sent you Fisher Toll profile number 2 to start off my project. I'll also be performing that later on this fall in November at the National Gallery of Art. So I thought this was a really good opportunity. And then the Richmond Symphony audition was coming up, and I sub there quite often, and I love that orchestra. And I thought, I really thought maybe, I'd like to have the opportunity to audition for it. And, having a job, having a family, freelancing, and, I picked up another, lucky enough to pick up another job that's very meaningful to me at the Doughboy Foundation, daily taps every day at 5 p.m. I felt like I needed a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance. And I loved what you've been doing, what you've been talking about with your gold method. It's similar to what I've talked with Chris Smith about and other professionals, and how regimented and organized they were. And for me personally, I'll be honest, I do a lot of metronome work, but in the past, when I've auditioned, I have lots of plate spinning. I'm not as organized or as methodical with it. I will play very slowly, but I think, say, if I were to do Petrushka or Eyes Variations on America, I'll probably do, I feel bad saying this, I probably do like 50 reps, and I just beat it with my head against a wall with it. So, when we first got together, you had everything in a spreadsheet with just a few repetitions. I think just 3, right? Like 2 or 3 for each excerpt, and you had them rotated on days. And I felt I got the same amount of work in, and I felt way more fresh, and I felt mentally fresh after I did it. At first, I was a little like, maybe this isn't enough. Like, I feel like I need to beat my head in more. And after I just really did what you said for 2 weeks, with the 2 days off in there, I was like, kind of shocked at the results. I was like, this is great. I feel fresh. I did, this is the heaviest time of year for me at work. And I felt like I got everything I needed done with the most minimal amount of reps than I could have possibly thought of, for myself. So less is more. And it's not something that Mark Gould kept telling me when I was a student. I was like, you're crazy, man. I love Mark Gould. But yeah, I didn't really understand most of the nuggets of wisdom that guy told me until much recently. 10 years, it's taken 10 years. But I'm just getting all of this now. And I guess, everyone matures differently. But this is a cool process to start. After 2 weeks, I was like, this is great. This is like already, I feel fresher. I'm more prepared with it. And I was kind of excited to start the next step of it. And then you were on vacation, then I was on vacation, but I still did this. I was going to go all in with this. The next step, you had more of a, if I'm not mistaken, you had more, sorry, I'm rambling. You're going to edit this, right?
No, it's okay. I can actually interject real quick just to give some context. In the first phase, or the first part of this, is my hope is through explaining what we did, someone listening might be able to try this. So first thing we did is we just took out all the difficult excerpts, the ones that were unfamiliar to you, or technically challenging, and we just focused on those for 2 weeks to try to raise the floor, right? To try to say, we're going to take these excerpts that are difficult or unfamiliar, and we're going to try to get them closer to the level of the excerpts that are less technically difficult or more familiar. Yeah. So you're right. That was sort of starting slower, 3 repetitions every other day for 2 weeks, working up to the top tempo. Then this phase was, we had two repetitions actually that were listed. Of course, we can talk about the nuance of how to actually go about doing this later. But the top tempo was a performance repetition, like at the goal tempo. And the second repetition was a drop tempo to assess any issues in that performance repetition or to continue to drive home great habits that you already were performing with.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. Because you said it way better than I would.
Yeah, I know. Just like that's sort of giving a little bit of context. So in the second phase, the focus shifts a little bit from, I'm going at these slower tempos to trying to begin to refine the presentation of the excerpt itself through all these performance repetitions. So what was this phase like for you, maybe in comparison to the previous phase, but just in general?
This phase was a little bit more gratifying because I felt like the groundwork I did before, I was truly doing a lot of shedding, and things weren't as comfortable. This next spot, like this next phase, was great because I added a bunch of other excerpts in there.
Right, and it's all the excerpts as well.
Yeah, the excerpts, and I went through all of them, and I kind of built a lot of strength. It was cool because I wasn't like really beating my head against a wall, but even the piccolo, especially what I noticed most was the piccolo trumpet excerpt was magically way easier for me than it's ever been. And that was something when I first picked up, when we started phase one, I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. And then I picked up as those 2 weeks went on and I went to the next phase, I noticed that the piccolo trumpet excerpt was easy, felt easy for me. And it was nice to go put them in with the other excerpts, the lower excerpts, like the Dvorak's and everything else. So it was cool to kind of get everything together. And I felt like I was in really good shape by the end of it. I noticed a difference in my job. Like everything for my job felt easier because of how I was approaching this. And I wasn't really beating my face in, but it was sort of like just kind of like layering over the past several weeks. I felt like I unknowingly got kind of into shape doing this, and all the different excerpts felt easier and easier. And it's sort of like it's a gradual thing. It's not like a instant gratification,
Sure.
like what people want with video games. Like you get that instant gratification, but this one, it took sort of like a 3 week, at 3 weeks into the project, like halfway through phase two, I was like, wow, like this piccolo trumpet excerpt, this low excerpt, like this, everything felt way easier. And then we got together because I just wanted to pick your brain. This is the whole process for me. When I do something, I kind of want to go all in. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a curious person. I want to learn as much as I can and get as much as I can from everyone. I love the different perspectives, especially from barber students. Most of my friends are barber butler students, and it's cool to see everyone's different take. And so getting together with you is huge because we went through the process with maybe 4 or 5 excerpts. So it was nice to kind of get like the sustain. I got a lot from hearing you play back and forth with me, like the sustain, and this is what right sounds like. And, like things that I don't think I'm doing, but you heard. And then it was just good to go back and forth with you and then kind of go through the process. Cause I'm like, okay, now I know I'm doing this right, but I'm not quite doing this right. And then I've taken that and I've kind of taken this process and I've done it with a few other things. Like next week, I got to play a piece I don't know. And I kind of went through it and I put into little sections and I made my own gold method real quick with it. And it's already feeling pretty good with it. So,
yeah. That's a very cool side effect for me, and kind of a hope of mine, right? Is that just seeing it work out will sort of hopefully forever change the way you think about how to approach practicing in general. Like, I'm not saying that everyone or anyone who ever interacts with me and the ideas that I have to do it the way that I think that they should do it. But yeah, I feel like saying this is one way you could do it, and I feel very strongly that it's a good way to do it, allows you then to say, well, how would I change this and continue to use these ideas to get the outcomes? I was glad that we could have that time together for sure, because I find that feedback to be very important. And also, I tried to just encourage you as much as I could with, there's a lot of things going really well. We just need to, it's almost like you're not just trying to give you trumpet feedback, but perspective on where you are in the process, because mentally these processes it's almost the hardest part, right? Just trying to keep your head in a good place. Can you speak at all to how the process like where was your headspace during this process? Was it in a better place than previous auditions? And just sort of commenting on that aspect of preparation.
This for me, like, okay, so I'm going to preface here. I'm going to go back. I love doing stuff like this. I mean, there's so many great players out there. The age of information, between you, Chris Smith, or Ben Wright, or some amazing trumpet players that are good people, and you can kind of get a little bit of a window into what they each do. I notice, every person kind of does similar. All successful people do something similar, and it's so healthy, no matter how old you are, what job you have, to kind of reach out and collaborate, try to get better, like get someone else's perspective, and it's so fresh. So doing this was really fun for me. It was a little bit different than what I personally do, and it was something that was fresh, and I feel like mentally, since it was different, it was more fun. So doing the Fisher Toll profiles, or this audition, and I've done so many auditions that it's silly. So this one was just a little bit different, and I was like, this is cool. I can kind of get better no matter what happens. Like nothing. I only get better. You only get better taking auditions. So we actually had a few phone calls. There were short phone calls, and I feel like the phone calls where we talked about the mental game of auditioning, and you were sharing your experiences with me. That was awesome, because it's just, no one does that. No one talks about this. It's so taboo. From mental health, or from like a performance anxiety, and it's good to kind of like talk to you, and I've talked to some other people about it, but no one ever openly talks about it. Mm-hmm. And I was gonna, you could feel free to take this part out, but man, I am so glad I talked to you about beta blockers, because that was a game changer for me, dude. That I like sat down in the audition room, and I was like, man, the thought process I had leading up, I sub here all the time. It would really suck if I didn't advance. I mean, it is what it is, because anyone can have a bad day, and I don't live or die by the way I play auditions. No one should. That's not healthy mentally. It's because every day is different and we're human. But man, I would have never tried a bit. If we hadn't talked, I would have never tried that. And I tried that, and I was like, I've already used it for two things that work. And when I sat down in that audition room, I was like, wow, I'm not nervous at all. This is like kind of cool. Yeah. And I don't know if you want to even, God, I want to tell people like, take drugs. But, I was like, man, for me personally, and I talked to my doctor, and I figured out what was good for me, and I tried it, and my PCM prescribed me 10 milligrams of propranolol, and I tried it, and it worked. And it's this whole process kind of changed my life a little bit. I'm saying it was great. I'm so glad I did this.
Yeah. So to give some context for the conversation we had, Kevin was just sort of trying to decide, should I take a beta blocker or should I not? And I gave him my experience with beta blockers, and I've taken them for one audition. I don't know if beta blockers caused my dry mouth, but I got dry mouth during it. So like, I'm not sure if that would be seen as a negative, because again, I don't know if I can relate those two things. But I wasn't nervous. I had none of those physical symptoms of being nervous. And so in that way, it was definitely effective for me as well. But the context and the perspective I tried to give was, It's sort of like a cherry on the top situation for me. It's like you've done all of your mental work to get your mind to be able to be relatively quiet and focused while you're playing. You have a good perspective on the audition saying, I want to do my best. I would like to win this, but my self-worth is not tied up in whether or not I win it. Those things are conversations that have to happen no matter what. And then on top of that, beta blockers can be something that allows you just to play up to your level of preparation, if that's something that you want to use. And I think if I recall, what I suggested to you was just to pick one either way, use them or don't, and then just observe the result. So if you chose not to use them, to say, well, did you get nervous and did that affect you? And do you feel like that affected the outcome? Because really all we're looking for is data to find the right solution and the right sort of mix or recipe, so to speak, for auditions. So I don't even think I suggested that you use them. I just think I said, if you use them, just pay attention to the outcome and the result. So hopefully that gives some context and it can make sense. For beta blockers is not a cure-all, but it can be effective in high pressure situations to allow you to focus and think and not experience those symptoms.
You articulated that better than I could ever articulate it.
Wow. Cool. What was the outcome of your audition?
Well, I mean, I have not taken many auditions since I've been in the Army band. I took one for the NSO a couple of years ago, but it was right after I played Shostakovich 5. Like, I played a performance after a whole week of Shostakovich 5 with Richmond. I went straight and drove 2 hours and went right into the audition room. Highly not recommended. I played really well, but I got nervous, and my face was just all the things put together. So I'm comparing the two. This audition for Richmond Symphony, I felt like I really wanted to just try this and go all in during the heaviest season, for military band trumpet players of the year, and right after a vacation and everything. And I felt like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all in. And I ended up making finals for it, which was great. And I felt really comfortable. I'm sorry, what was the question? I hope I'm not rambling.
You just answered. I was just asking what the result was, and you had said you had made the finals. And I know we talked, but I want you to share. What was that like for you?
Well, it's great. Being able to go and do the amount of preparation that you want, and I really felt like this would be a really good, project to try this out. Something different. So doing the gold method, really with a heavy season and everything else during the summer for military band trumpet players, going and doing this and preparing this. And I was like, okay, I have prepared probably better than I've prepared for any other audition. More methodically and at least in a correct, not over aggressively brutal way. Just something that was a healthy, well thought out process. So going and trying this out in the first round and then trying out the beta blocker, I felt like I played. It was great to have these results because I felt like I played how I wanted to play. Probably 90% of how I wanted to play in that room, I did it. And I was really, it was nice affirmation as I don't want to say this openly, but as a military band trumpet player, it's nice to go to an orchestral audition. It's nice affirmation from the work that I put together. I was like, this is good. I played it how I wanted to play it, basically, 90%. Second round, I felt very similar. And then the third round, my iPad died in the middle of the round, and I had to get all the excerpts together. But with all said and done, I didn't feel flustered. I didn't feel. I felt like I represented myself well, and that's what I wanted to do. And that was a good representation of my playing. And I thought that was 90%. When in previous auditions, I didn't really feel that way. So
Yeah.
it's good affirmation, basically.
So it sounds like you were as prepared as you feel like you could have been, which is, in my opinion, really all we can control. You can't control what the committee is going to want. You can't control who is going to show up. All you can do is control how prepared you are. And if I'm not wrong, I feel like I texted you like the day before. It said something like, "We don't know how it's going to turn out, but I bet I could argue that no one will be more prepared than you are at this audition." And obviously, I don't know if that's true. I was just trying to be encouraging to you, but I imagine if it's not true, you're probably one of the most prepared people. And my hope is that would give you sort of the confidence to, like, let go of the things you can't control because of the level of preparation. And so you were prepared. It sounds like you liked the organization. You talked about how fun it was mentally. These are things that you liked about the process. Are there any other things that maybe you haven't said that you can think of that were things that you just enjoyed about it or were interesting to you about audition, preparing for an audition in this way?
Like I'm a huge fan of professional development. The more people you talk to from different walks of life, and even out of our industry, it's just so healthy, and you learn so much. I love being a student for life. That's most musicians are. All musicians are, actually, because you're not. No matter how old you are, you keep learning. Getting together with you, kind of talking with you a little bit, and kind of getting into the weeds, going back and forth with you. That one session we had virtually, that was super fun. I got a lot out of that. And then that one conversation with you when we were both, we were both driving or something. That was awesome. That for me was like an aha moment that kind of encouraged me to do something that I haven't done in ever, and it was awesome. Kind of changed the game for me a little bit.
That's great. This is also very important for me as the person who is trying to also be a student of this process. Is there anything that you would change? Is there anything that you feel like after you've been through the whole thing that you would maybe do differently next time, or something that we did that didn't necessarily help you as much? Or is there something that you did but you wish you would have done more of? Is there anything like that?
Things I would have done differently. There was like 1 or 2 days where I was like, pardon my French, F this excerpt. I'm just gonna, I can't, I'm gonna just do it over. And I was like, that was dumb. I shouldn't have done that. You told me not, like, obviously no one's perfect, but yeah, there was one. And then I took a day off the next day because I totally just wrecked my faith trying to play that low excerpt from Scheherazade over and over and over and over again. And I was like, wow, I can't play above the staff right now. But yeah, I mean, that's for me personally. I would have, really sticking to this. If you're going to do something, like, trust the process. And I say this for anyone who really gives this a shot. Like, worst comes to worst, like, you do it and it's not for you. But if you try something, and this goes for anything, like if you try a new mouth, you're not going to just try it for 2 days and put it away. Like, obviously, like Harry Potter with the wand, like like that wand, that one wand or that one mouthpiece, it's just not for you. I equate that because my daughters love Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But, like, really try this. I really encourage people to just go all in with it. Things that, when we first started, I was like, this is just not enough reps. And then once I did it, I was like, oh shit, this is definitely enough reps. So, and like I had some doubts about talking to someone else, like when they were like, feel free to edit this out. When I was talking to someone else, a couple people about it, they were like, yeah, it's really good. Maybe a little much. But then I'm, like perceptions, like some people like perceptions are reality. And the powerlifting, and I was like, this is not really that. This is different. Like, so it actually was better than what I've been doing and beating my face in. I don't know if I don't know if you want to add that in, but I
yeah, of course. I think it's where I can handle it. It's interesting to hear. Like,
there's a very, like, it's not even a negative perception. It's just like, wow, this is a little bit of a powerlifting thing. It's
Well, and
not though.
obviously that's where it came from. The genesis of all of this gold method influence was from my understanding of powerlifting. But to me, what's interesting is it's just the idea of what is too much. You know, like how do we define what too much is? Like if we want a particular result and we're saying we want to go all in and do everything we possibly can, if I'm not, how long would your practice sessions take each day approximately?
Man, it depends on how neurotic I am. Honestly, I mean, like I could,
Like if you follow the program closely.
if I follow the program closely, it's actually really healthy. Like I really followed your program closely, except for that one day where I really was an
Sure.
idiot. But I felt like I could do everything in like, week one. I felt like I was able to do everything in like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, the Richmond list is fairly short as well.
It is short,
Obviously,
but like once you got all of them in there,
yeah,
like the second phase, then I had to kind of break it up a little bit. Like I did my warm up, I did my job, or and then I did my freelance in between that stuff. And then when my girls went to bed, I really felt like hour and a half. But
sure.
even if you were to have a bigger list, I don't feel like it would take as much as like, it wouldn't take more than an hour.
Yeah, and so I think what's interesting to me is I think that generally speaking, musicians talking about practicing 3, 4, 5 hours a day, especially for an audition, is normal. And so the idea that we can be efficient and get the same amount done in 60 minutes and 90 minutes, maybe in 2 hours, depending on what you're struggling with, that to me seems like it's not that it's too much, it's actually less than what people would necessarily be doing. The thing that I think people think is too much is the amount of thought and organization behind it. Yeah, there's a fair amount of setup, as we found out, in terms of labeling tempos and figuring out groupings of excerpts in terms of difficulty. And on my side, there's a fair amount of setup and just trying to get everything organized. But once you do that, it like significantly streamlines everything after that. So you really end up saving time. In my opinion, you save time if you're willing to put some time in at the front end.
Absolutely. I didn't realize until I started this. I was like, oh wow, like I have to go through, I have to study, but like I'm so glad I did, because it really, like I practiced less than I normally would for previous auditions, and I felt more prepared.
Mm-hmm.
The thinking that precedes the attempt is an Irving Bush quote that Vince Panzarella used to quote all the time. And I love that. It's because it's like, like practice smarter, like practicing, getting things, organized away from the horn. So when you pick it up, it's easier. Less is more. I wish I would have listened to my teachers before that.
Yeah. And it's
easier said than done.
Sure.
I guess I could absolutely go, like one neurotic day, I could play Petrushka 100 times. Still keep wanting to go, but
yeah, and
it was healthy.
Yeah, and like I think for me, part of the value I find in avoiding something like that is there's no sort of guarantee that 100 times is better than 50, and 50 is better than 30, and 30 is better than 10. Like to have some version of a final result that's very clear in your head, and then using the entirety of the process to chip away at that over time, I think yields a better and more consistent result than trying to just hammer it out in one day. Science, I know, supports that as well. Like our brains, it takes time to rewire our brains and myelinate things. But to your point, it's okay with me if people don't want to do this. It's totally fine. Like I'm not saying that it's the best way for everybody, but for people that are busy and the organization does not come natural to them, or they just don't have time to sit down and think about how to organize things, maybe it could be valuable for a person like that, right? And that sounds like you were that kind of person.
Yeah, I want to, because there's something missing from this, because like, we talked a lot about the musical product and recording yourself and listening to recordings and having an idea of how you want to play it. And we haven't talked about that. I want, because I think, like there could be a perception of powerlifting and music and the way you approach this, but it was the way we talked about this and the way we went through it together was listening back after each repetition and is this the way I really want to play it?
Mm-hmm.
So each one of those repetitions I am recording, and I go back and I listen, and I even sent you one of those, and I'm glad I did, because it's good to get, I learned something about the articulation of Pershing that I still, do today. And, it's I think it's healthy, and it's a good approach both musically and from an organizational standpoint,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's obviously something that was hard for me to understand at first. When I first started doing it, it was very powerlifting oriented. Just do this thing in this way, like you're learning a skill. But I felt like I kept getting challenged by people on the musical end of things. How do we account for the fact that we're making music? And that's not this making music and shaping a phrase is not the same. I mean, there is a layer of like skill based. We want to make it consistent, but so much more of that is conceptual and how we shape the picture in our head. And so what I feel like I've learned how to do over time, what I tried to help you understand, especially through the time we got together and did it virtually, was how do we use this process to get feedback and shape the excerpt the way you want musically, instead of just playing repetitions mindlessly, which would not, I mean, maybe it'll help you, but it's not going to result in the goal. It's like now trying to help people understand how do you use the process to shape the excerpts musically and then also develop consistency in execution.
Yeah. And that gets to the third part of this process, part 3, where you had me put everything in rounds and go through it. And that's when I got really into the weeds with some recording and listening after I've laid the groundwork with it. I listened to recordings a lot away from the trumpet. And then then talking to you and my own kind of process. And I came up with a game plan of how I wanted to musically perform these to a panel, because you kind of have to go, as you kind of have to like be confident in the choices that you choose and be convincing to a panel. So a lot of this was listening when I wasn't playing. I felt a lot more fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was really playing less and focusing more on the big picture.
Yeah.
And I was able, when I got to the audition, I felt really prepared and I could focus more on the musical, performance rather than just executing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this clean. And I was just talking to Renee Shapiro, associate principal in Baltimore Symphony the other day about that, how like his thought process on excerpts is so musically oriented after, and that's how I thought there was some similarities here, in the way you were talking to me, and I'm going to try to approach it more with that. If I were to do anything different, I want to approach it what we did more musically.
Yeah. And so that's a big part. What I love about the process is you could, hypothetically speaking, do the same exact thing for the next audition you take, but you're going to understand how to get more out of it the second time, right? Because you'll know, okay, I'm going to have this slow part of the process where I'm playing excerpts slowly. How do I get the most out of that? And then what should I be studying during that time to make the next phase even more effective, because I have a clearer picture in my head? And then if you do that 5 times, all of a sudden you have this potentially bulletproof plan that you can use and be like, I know exactly what to do. I know exactly how to prepare for an audition. I just need to do the process. And then at that point, it can be a bit of a numbers game. When I interviewed Chris Smith, he talked about a game of attrition. Can you just hang in there long enough for you to be able to see the result you want? And so some people can't for various reasons, and that's okay. But I think part of what will help that process is to have the sort of surviving, I guess, is to have a process that you trust. And so, yeah, getting better each time, getting more out of the process is, I think, how you do that. So I'm grateful for this feedback. It's been really helpful for me to hear from you. Is there any sort of last things that maybe you feel like you didn't say that you would like to say?
No, I mean, just to reiterate, this was a really fun collaboration. It was different. And I highly encourage, if you're listening, I highly encourage, if you're, no matter how old you are, what kind of you're a student or you're a professional or you're just really try something new. It's so healthy and it's fun, and no matter how many times you do this, you can get a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit from something else, and you can kind of put it together and make your own method with it. So I will take the gold method and I'll take the other methods that people have taught. I've sort of like kind of shaped my own, method, and I'll figure out what works for me. But it's never a dull moment, man. This
That's
was fun.
awesome.
Thanks for getting together and collaborating.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with someone of your, abilities. Like it's there, for you, the playing is so much there that it's just trying to figure out how do we unlock it, So it's pretty fun for me. So if somebody wanted to hear the Fisher Toll, or if they wanted to, just engage with anything that you're putting out content wise, how would they find you?
We have multiple handles, but reach out to us at militarytrumpetjobs.com, or check out our Fisher Toll profile and other excerpts and audition information on our website, militarytrumpetjobs.com, our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. You can find me at that'snotspit.com or ryanbeachtrumpet.com. There's some contact pages there. I want to thank Kevin one more time. Thank you for giving me some of your time and debriefing with me. Like I said, I learned quite a bit from you, and I look forward to any other potential collaborations in the future. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you. This was fun, man.
I want to thank Brandon Yoakum for his work on mastering this episode of the podcast. You can check out Brandon's work at epiphanyrecordingstudio.com. And most of all, I would like to thank you for checking this episode out. We will see you next time.
Oh, yeah.